Now, you may or may not have heard about this, but May the 4th was also the day of the nationwide shutdown protest movement. It's been driven by anti immigration sentiment all over South Africa. And if you didn't hear about it, it's worth knowing about it because this is an underlying brewing problem in this country that the government has just been completely incapable of dealing with for the longest time. I don't know whether it's just incompetence, and they say you must never attribute malice to something that can easily be explained by incompetence, especially true when dealing with our government, or whether it's driven by some larger, more universal sentiment of Pan-Africanism and, kind of liberation struggle loyalties to other countries in Africa, which harbored and gave succor to so many of the people inside of our ANC and other aligned movements. Don't know what the answer is, but it is turning into a major problem for South Africa. So a lot of people, it started with Operation Dudula some time ago, and it's kept on festering and growing. Xenophobia is the word of the day, and it seems that May the 4th has been chosen as the day for action, for people to express their dissatisfaction around what is going on with regard to illegal immigration, but more generally, just immigration of other Africans from African countries who are in South Africa now, whether it's to do a job, to seek economic opportunities for themselves and their families, to get away from war-torn conflict zones, whatever their reasons may be. There are a lot of local people who are particularly angry and are showing that in a vehement way on the streets of South Africa. So I don't know if you saw over the weekend, there were a couple of clips doing the rounds of ordinary South Africans going into public hospitals and effectively chasing away. I saw a clip where a Congolese guy was in there with his daughter. They were obviously seeking medical attention for something quite serious. And these, in inverted commas, I'm going to give them the most charitable interpretation of this that I can. Concerned citizens, let's call them, basically threatened this guy, said to him, "You've got no right to be in this country. Go back to the Congo, seek your medical attention there, go and vote in your country, make your own country better, get out of our country."
If you know yourself that you're not South African, please stand up. Please stand up. Please don't try and stand up right now. Stand up. Hey, fast. Because Zimbabwe, you run fast and go to the border here. Hurry. All these nurses and doctors, they are here for South Africans.
This is obviously something which is going to spill over into violence and a lot more terrible stuff if we allow it to. Why is it happening? Well, we've had unchecked illegal immigration for years now. I'm not just talking about border posts, which are porous as hell, but the borders themselves, which are not guarded. I mean, people regularly cross the Limpopo River in droves to come to South Africa because this is one of the countries where there is opportunity, whether that opportunity is legitimate and legal or whether it's an opportunity to get involved in the underground illegal economy. That is for those people to decide, and they're given essentially free rein. Now, we have huge unemployment in South Africa, so there are a great many South African citizens who cannot find jobs, and this is putting pressure on those people to find a scapegoat for their own inability to find employment. If people are poor and they're desperate, they look for someone to blame. This has happened throughout history. It's happening in South Africa right now. So you have people who live in townships in South Africa who are getting increasingly frustrated that they see the shops, the major economic areas of interaction and engagement being largely taken over by foreigners who are probably a little more desperate, probably a little more educated, probably a little more in survival mode than the people who are living there at the moment. And this is driving enormous amounts of envy, bitterness, resentment, the kinds of stuff you find in any communist place in the world. But it's happening in South Africa where there are differences in language, differences in culture, differences in education. Very often you'll find that Zimbabweans, Malawians, even the Congolese come here with the equivalent level of education, but far more adaptability and basic numeracy and literacy. And these guys are able to create networks in not only the townships, but in the CBDs of cities that have fallen to pieces like Johannesburg, and essentially take them over. And through those networks, they run, smaller connections with people who they know from their home country, people who speak their language, people who they know are also outside of the system. And these people are willing to act essentially for and in the interests of whatever economic pursuits these people are chasing. So unemployment, porous border, and a complete inaction from the government. I mean, Home Affairs, the visa system is so backlogged, it's enormously difficult to get your paperwork right. You know this as a South African citizen, that it's very, very hard to get your stuff up to date. And it just seems to me that if we don't nip this in the bud fairly soon, we are going to have massive problems. We've already seen weeks of violence, arson, intimidation. There's been targeting of foreign-owned shops. It's triggered international diplomatic concern from countries like Nigeria and Ghana. And it's not just a protest. You could call it a nationwide social flashpoint. It combines the unemployment, the crime fears, the migration tensions, and a general level of dissatisfaction where the economy isn't growing as fast as it can, as it should, to accommodate all the people here. So it's a ticking time bomb, to use an overused metaphor. And I hope we can sort this out. Of course, my sympathies are with perfectly good people who are trying to pursue opportunities in South Africa where, if you work hard, there's a job for you. These guys fall outside of the law and scope of things like minimum wage. They aren't legally protected. They can be hired and fired without any of the normal labor laws coming into play. Of course, the Labor Department will tell you that's not true, but how do they enforce it? They don't, and they can't. So these ordinary, decent people who are just looking for a way to get some money into the bank account so they can feed their kids, these people are under enormous pressure, and sometimes they will do terrible things to earn that money. Similarly, a lot of South African citizens who have not found work in months and even years are looking at this and going, these guys are taking not only employment opportunities away from me, regardless of whether or not there's a skills match there, which is a whole different discussion, but they're also looking at public services, health, education, and things that the government is supposed to provide to the people of South Africa, and that these foreigners, whether legal or illegal, are taking advantage of. So I think it's important to watch this space, and I think you probably realize that too. I'm sure, like so many people in South Africa, you also know people who've come here from foreign countries. You perhaps have people working for you who are from foreign countries, and you know what pressure they're under, not only from the point of view of being able to comply with the legal requirements of working in South Africa, but these are also people who are under constant threat of actual physical harm, especially if they go into certain places at certain times of the day or night. So we have to be aware of this, and the overt violence that could break out as a result of South Africans and foreigners taking up arms against each other could be diabolical for South Africa's economy. Something else that no one's talking about is the fact that most of these illegal and legal foreigners are living in informal settlements, which we know have expanded beyond all belief in the years since 1994, despite the government creating RDP housing, trying to formalize the whole housing sector. We've got a Department of Housing. Who knows how much they've got right, but it doesn't appear when you drive around South Africa, particularly around urban areas, as if they've done any amount of good at all. I hear constantly people complaining about the Cape Flats and the townships, Dlanga and Khayelitsha in Cape Town. But it's an endemic problem for Johannesburg, Pretoria, Bloemfontein, Port Elizabeth, East London, Cape Town. Every single city in South Africa has some form of illegal housing, informal housing, as people want to call it. And this is a major source of huge tension. You've got people in poverty living right next door to each other. These are unsafe environments. They're insanitary environments. They're always piled up to the ceilings with garbage. Often they're built on the sides of highways, and pedestrians are regularly killed crossing these highways. There are fire dangers around, fires that start. We've seen innumerable stories over the last 5 to 10 years of shack fires that begin and then can't be put out because they're all built so close to each other that there's just a surplus of flammable material in the area. Children are growing up in these very unsafe environments, which again is a concern for those of us who worry about gender-based and child violence, abuse, rape. That's happening in these environments. They are not good places for anyone to be living. And those exist as a result of people migrating to the cities to look for opportunities to make money so that they can eke out an existence. It is an awful, awful situation, and it is exacerbated by the fact that so many of the foreign immigrants have to move into these places. They're not coming here and immediately buying houses in the suburbs, though they may eventually get to that. Their original place of residence when they come to South Africa is going to be in one of these absolute hellhole informal housing areas.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. The border is more too open for anybody to enter into South Africa, both on bike, both on car, both by walking. They just freely enter, walk into South Africa, even without anybody obstructing the movement. And that is too bad. And that is why I've said that the government of South Africa need to be blamed for all this. For the citizens to come out with so much hatred on the foreigners, meaning they have complained, and they cannot bear it anymore. So as it stands now, the government really need to do the work. And they need to settle the citizens. They need to do so many things. You know, they need to put some restriction to their borders. No matter who is coming in, no matter who is going out. There should be a law that governs all these things. And even somebody enters into South Africa, into any country, illegally, by law, the person needs to look for a way, a document or something that will make him legal in that country if really he wants to stay there. So I don't blame the citizen for reacting this much. I blame the government for not have put a strictly restriction, on their borders by allowing so many people to just walk into South Africa, do whatever they like without any proper documentation. It doesn't happen anywhere, even in Europe, in America. You enter any of these countries illegally. The first thing you fight for is to get a document, a permit to stay in that country. Because if not, when the police arrest you or control you when you are walking, they will deport you immediately because you are an illegal foreigner. So for me, there should be a law that governs all this, that covers any illegal immigrant that comes in. If the person refuses to go forward to seek for a document to legalize his journey, if the person refuses to legalize his movement, his staying, then the police that is in charge should deport him whenever they control him or see him walking on the way. So please, I think the government of South Africa have a lot to do. And please don't get me wrong. This is just my thoughts. This is my feelings. This is how I think it should be. So share your thoughts on the comment section so we can talk it over. Thank you for watching and thank you for subscribing. And see you guys in the comment section. Bye for now.